What's up, everyone? It's Captain Kyle Smith, and this week I sat down for a morning meeting with CEO of the San Diego Firefighters Credit Union, Ed Daley. Ed's been with the credit union for 26 years, and he's seen it all. He shares his advice on how to avoid some of the mistakes he's seen us make over the years. I hope you guys enjoy it.
All right. Hey, Ed, welcome to the bullpen. Thanks for meeting me.
Thanks, Kyle.
Yeah, so I had Michael McCormick and Robert Logan on the show recently, and they both recommended that I contact you, reach out to you, and get you on the show. I do recognize the fact that you are very busy, and appreciate you taking out the time out of your day to meet us here. We spoke on the phone a few weeks ago, and you were telling me that your son is getting ready to go off to college. Has he now left? Is he now out of the house and away to school?
He's a sophomore, so he moved out, went to his own house with 5 other soccer players. So he's got 6 soccer players living in a house down at UTC, and so he's out and about. I mean, soccer's canceled for the year, but he's out and about. So he is living his life as he calls himself. He's now a NARP, a non-athletic real person, just because he doesn't have soccer practice for the first time in his life since he was probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 years old. So he's actually enjoying it. He's still working out with his team. He's still doing things on the side, even though they're really not supposed to. So, you know, they're college kids, right? So they're still doing that. So, but he's out and about. And we're now socially distant from our son. It's a little bit of a challenge, but it has to be that way, you know, because he is out in the real world. And in the real world, it's already kind of infiltrated the soccer team on the fringes. So being an older guy myself, we tend to be more cautious. And so, but he's gone. He's at UCSD, and they don't start until the end of September, early October, as far as college itself goes. So he's just out being a real kid right now. So good for him.
Yeah, good for him. I can attest to the fact that being a non-athletic real person is an actual thing. I'm sure if he's like me, which it sounds like he probably was, he might be going through some withdrawals here soon. With that said, I didn't invite you on the show just because your son is a high-level soccer player, although that certainly helps. But before we get into all that, anything else related to sort of the pandemic or anything that's been going on in your guys' life that's really impacting you in a negative way or even in a positive way? We kind of talked offline about how Zoom has changed things for us. Anything else going on?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the credit union's been massively affected by it, just as in order for us to maintain our business continuity. You know, we're a small credit union. We only have 16 employees, and so if the virus gets into the credit union, that's not a good thing. So what we've done is we've kind of separated out half the staff, or nearly half the staff, and we have half the staff working remotely via Zoom, via a software called Splashtop that they can process remotely. So if something did sneak into the credit union and we've dodged a bullet a couple of times, we're still able to process the day-to-day. You know, unlike a lot of businesses, you know, you can shut down and you can move on and you can bring it back up later on in the week type of stuff. That doesn't work with credit unions or any financial institution. So you have to process every single day. So we've set up a system where we have an in-branch and upstairs group that can process, and we have an outside at-home group that can process. And those two groups never get together, just so we have the ability to do that. And when this whole thing first came about, you know, even though you have disaster recovery plans, I mean, this is a disaster of the magnitude I don't think your plan really covers. And so it took us a little bit of time to put it together and how we would do this, how we would get people out, what type of technology, what type of hardware. But we fairly quickly were able to put it together and say we dodged a bullet. Now we've been operating smoothly both inside and outside the credit union for months now, which is good. So if something happened inside the credit union and we needed to shut the branch down because of COVID getting in too close to the, you know, inside the branch, we can still process every single day outside the branch. So it's actually worked out fine for us. And we've been, like I say, we've dodged a bullet a couple of times. Employees that have been exposed through either family members or through relatives, but it's not worked its way into the credit union so far. So we've been fortunate in that. But, you know, every day it's the same kind of issue. We just don't know. So in that respect, we're doing okay and we're moving forward, but it definitely has changed the world. I mean, I have employees that I see via Zoom every couple of weeks, and that's pretty much it. Fortunately, we have good employees. We have, I'm not one of those people that, you have to be at your desk at 7:30 and you have to leave at 4:30 and it's about the job getting done. And as long as the job gets done, I personally don't care whether you do it at 7:30 in the morning or 7:30 at night, as long as it's not a time dependent job. And so far, our staff has done a great job of being able to kind of maintain and get everything done. And it's working smoothly. So it's been interesting, to say the least. And it still is. We get examined by the federal examiners every 12 to 18 months. And this is the first time in 26 years they haven't come into the credit union. They did everything remotely. A little odd. Once again, they're everything remotely. We have to send them stuff. They send us back. And so, it definitely changes the way we all do business. And everyone's working through the same thing. It's not like if we were on our own and we were by ourselves, the only ones affected, that would be really difficult, but we're not. Everybody's in the same boat. And everybody understands that. So far so good. And, we're going to continue to keep moving forward and hope for the best and hope that doesn't infiltrate the credit union. So. Yeah,
no, absolutely. What I'm hearing is, and we'll get more into it as we get into your first alarm, but what I'm hearing is you guys have the flexibility, the ability to adapt and control the controllables, right? We didn't ask for any of this. We didn't expect any of it, but it sounds like at the credit union, you guys are doing your best to control the controllables. And I really like that. That was something actually my college soccer coach would tell us all the time: just control the things that are within your realm of control, and really worry about the other stuff. So I really do like hearing that. Well, you ready to get your first alarm started?
Sure.
All right, well, here we go. So here at the San Diego Fire Department, a first alarm assignment would be 4 engines and a truck. But here at the Firehouse, I'll ask you 4 questions. You give us 1 piece of advice. That sound good?
Sounds great.
All right, cool. So you're going to be first in on your first alarm. And when you're first in, you need to give a size up. So your size up, Ed, is going to be who you are, where you work, and how long you've been doing it.
Great. I am from Quincy, Massachusetts, about 10 miles south of Boston, son of a shipyard worker. Quincy, my hometown was a shipyard town. During World War II, they had about 40,000 employees there, and gradually, kind of like manufacturing in the U.S., shipbuilding eventually petered out and went somewhere else. And so the town kind of died for a while. It was kind of almost something out of a Bruce Springsteen movie. I think I was the only kid and only boy in my family, including my cousins, who did not work in the shipyard. Pretty much everybody else worked in the shipyard. And when it came my time to work in the shipyard, my older brother wouldn't let me work there. He said, "You're going to college. It's a dangerous place to work. People get injured all the time down there, killed down there. You're going to college. You can't work there." All right. He was my older brother, and I had a lot of respect for him. And so probably the one regret is I didn't get that summer and working in the shipyard and working alongside my dad and my brothers. But, it is what it is. That was kind of the one regret I have. But, first of my family go to college, the only one of my family go to college type of thing, back east, a little Division III school, played basketball back there. And then gradually we kind of worked our way across country. My wife was a hell of an athlete. As good an athlete as my kid is a soccer player, my wife was a better athlete. She was a professional triathlete, raced all over the world, Ironman distance, won Ironman distance races, absolute beast of an athlete. So we kind of migrated to San Diego we lived in Colorado for about 4 years, lived up in the mountains. She was also an unbelievable skier. And we migrated back here to San Diego so she could be a professional triathlete. And I could go back to school and end up getting an MBA from San Diego State. And I actually taught for a while at National University too. I taught finance and capital markets at National University while I was working at the credit union. I came from a banking background, mortgage banking background, and then kind of found my way into a credit union looking for a job, had no idea what a credit union was. They said, "Well, it's kind of like banking." I went, "Okay, I can do banking." And when I came to the credit union 26 years ago, I had never worked anywhere more than 2 or 3 years. I had always moved on. I had gone from being an accountant to a controller to a chief financial officer. And this was the next step up to a CEO. And I had only worked 2 or 3 years at a place. So I assumed, I don't know, I'll work here 2 or 3 years and I'll move on again. And obviously 26 years later, things seemed to work out pretty well. It was one of those things where as soon as I get in, I went, wait a second, this is a pretty good job. I get to work with firefighters, and my board, they're all firefighters. And, the saying, firefighters work hard and they play hard. They do. I got to see the other side of that. And I realized pretty quickly, this is a good group of people to work with. And I had the experience that I had working with other board of directors. It wasn't quite the same as when I worked with firefighter board of directors. Coming from a banking background, the board of directors of banks, it's about shareholders and about themselves. You go to work for a credit union and it's about your members, and there are no shareholders, there are members. Everyone's a member owner. So it's a pretty straightforward, simple goal is to serve the member owners. And once I kind of figured that out, I realized that's a pretty good deal here. And so 26 years later, still at the credit union, still working with firefighters and still enjoying what I do. So that's kind of in a nutshell, where the whole thing came from. So, but 26 years later, still working there and still having fun.
That's cool. So for people that are listening that may not be from San Diego, the credit union we're San Diego Firefighters Credit Union. It was founded back in 1984 for firefighters by firefighters, and it's just a really awesome place. And can you touch on a little bit some of the benefits that the credit union would offer that maybe one of the big banks just can't compete with?
Well, I think the biggest difference between our credit union and any big bank or any big credit union, being a small credit union, you can come walk in. Well, it's tougher to walk in now with COVID, but prior to that, you could just walk into the CEO's office and voice your complaints, your concerns. If you have any questions, it goes to the top. The decisions are made in San Diego by us. If you have a firefighter who has some issues and has some credit issues and has had some problems, you can come directly to the board, you can come directly to me, and we'll work with you. And so, we did a loan the other day from a firefighter that, some real financial challenges, and it's a loan that they would not do anywhere else, flat out. You look at it and go, there's no one else that would do this loan. We did the loan for him. He's a San Diego City firefighter, him and work him through the process. And I think that's one of the main differences that we can do for firefighters. Like I said, coming from a banking background, I know what banks do. Banks cut you off at the knees when you need it most. That was, and like I said, I don't criticize banks for doing that. That's their business model. Banks serve shareholders. That's what they do. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's banking 101, and I don't have a problem with that. It's just if you need help, credit unions are there for you. And what San Diego Firefighters does, because we have that closed field of membership, we know who you are, we know where you're going, we know the relationship, and we tend to step up and do things that other credit unions would never do. And, we don't give away the store by doing that, because typically when we do that, our firefighters tend to also step up and do the right thing too. So it's been a good relationship that when we do those things and we take the extra step, it's been rare that a firefighter hasn't then stepped up and done the right thing and stayed with the credit union and made sure that we were whole too. So I think that's the biggest difference. We have the ability to do that, and you can go right to the CEO. And if you don't like something, you can always come to the CEO too. You just walk in the office, and you want to yell at me, you can yell at me. Happens once in a while, not too often, but once in a while, someone will call and they'll be pissed off, and you can call and yell at me. I'm okay with that. It's your credit union. And I think that's the biggest thing that people sometimes really don't understand, that is truly your credit union. Say, we don't serve shareholders. When I was in banking, we served shareholders. That's what we did. The customers were someone we could make money off of. Here in credit unions, we need to make a certain amount of return in order to stay in business. But ultimately, we serve the members, and that's our job. So I think that's the biggest difference. And that's what we can do for people, and that's what we do on a daily basis.
Oh, it's cool. And I think I imagine after 26 years of listening to firefighters complain to you, you probably have developed some thick skin. With that in mind, who is the credit union for? Is it just San Diego City folks? Is it anybody across the country? Who can join the San Diego Firefighters Credit Union?
Yeah, it's San Diego County. So San Diego City started with San Diego City. San Diego City firefighters started with a relief association in '84. The firefighters got together because they were unhappy with the municipal credit union at the time. And so they decided that they could do a better job themselves. And so they got together with the relief and the union, who sponsored the credit union for the first couple of years, financially sponsored the credit union for the first couple of years. And so initially it was city firefighters, expanded after that, and it's any firefighter in San Diego County, lifeguards who are paid by the fire department, you know, the EMTs that are paid through the fire department. So it's San Diego County now, throughout the whole county. But the core still was San Diego City. Those are the guys that started to put it together and really stood by the credit union early on. The credit union needed that support. So.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Sort of pivoting a little bit and talking about, you know, your son now being off at college, maybe there was some advice that you gave him before he left, or is there something now looking back over the course of your career? Is there a piece of advice you would have given the 25-year-old version of yourself now knowing what you do?
Yeah, you know, it's an interesting question because it all depends on what you do for work, right? I mean, you know, firefighters come in and they have, at least back in the day, they'd have the ready-made pension already set there. You know, to me, the biggest thing is pension. At 25, I mean, I didn't know anything about pension, and I was still kind of traveling and trying to figure things out. And, you know, we were living in Colorado at 25, just about to move here at 26 to start a whole new life with pretty much no money in the bank. Not sure if we could even make it here. You know, I always like to say, you know, thinking about retirement as early as possible is a really, really smart thing, because then the earlier you're able to retire. For myself at 25, 26, you know, we were just on the edge, just making it work and traveling cross country and trying to figure out things. So to me, it's about pension. I mean, firefighters have a step up and public employees have a step up because you have the pension. You know, I think it's only about 11% of the population, and 9 to 11% has a pension nowadays, a defined benefit pension. Most people now have 401ks and types of things like that aren't defined benefit. So it's even more important if you don't have a defined benefit pension to really start saving early and really put that aside. It's easier said than done. You know, at 25, you know, you're looking at kids, you're looking at trying to buy a house, you're looking at, you know, saving for college, you're looking at, you know, your career, you're early in your career, you don't have much money. So that's the biggest challenge, I think, at a time when you should be thinking about it. It's also the most difficult time to actually do something about it. And I know in hindsight, when I look back at me, I mean, you know, we were clueless. My wife and I were absolutely clueless, and we just picked up from Colorado, moved here with about $3,000 in the bank and no jobs. And it actually came down to the last Friday before we had to either pay another rent or move back to Colorado, where we got jobs. We both got a call on a Friday afternoon offering the jobs. Otherwise, we were probably going to pack up and move back to Colorado, having failed, with our tail between our legs and saying, "Oh, we love San Diego, but we can't find jobs." So, you know, it's difficult to think about that when you're just on the edge and surviving. And we were both college educated. You know, we both had, you know, college degrees, but still, at that point in time, still difficult to find work, and especially when you come from a different place. You know, moving from Colorado and San Diego, and we were completely clueless. So, but you know, in hindsight, you know, when I had the opportunity to put money away from retirement, we didn't. We went and played. That's what we did. You know, like I said, my wife became a professional athlete, and you know, I was her initial sponsor while she traveled around the world, and I stayed home at work. And you know, there wasn't as much money back then in professional triathlons as there is today. And she was good at it, but not good enough for me to retire. Let me put it that way.
Right.
So yeah, the biggest thing is just retirement, and that's like I say, firefighters. Having been around firefighters for a long time, you know, I know that back in the day, you know, they would always be thinking of how can we retire, how soon can we retire, what can we retire at, and where does our pension go to, and so firefighters, I think, have a leg up in that respect because of the business, because of what you guys do, and also, you know, you can't do firefighting forever. I mean, that's the reality of it too. Is you have a limited time frame. It's not like you can be I'm 61 years old. You're not a 61-year-old firefighter carrying people out of buildings, or running into buildings, or carrying hoses. You physically just can't do it for all that long. So for you guys, it is more important, and you know, which is why the pension is important, because it's not a long-term job. You know, for me, I sit at a desk. I can paper cuts my biggest worry. I tend to. It's like that's my the biggest pain I feel from working. So I can continue on as long as I don't bleed to death on my desk with paper cuts.
Right. Well, if you do, if you get a bad paper cut, you call us, we'll come take care of you. But what strikes me as being just a really good point, even for the newer generation of firefighters that don't have a pension, the sooner they can start saving, even just $2 out of every paycheck and have it automatically taken out of your check and placed straight into a savings account, maybe at the credit union. You're kind of building that savings muscle where it just becomes part of how you operate. And we had a retired fire captain on the show recently, Zeke Sanchez. He said that you could just save between 10 cents or 20 cents out of every dollar. You're going to be way ahead of the game, whether you have a pension or not. And when you put it in those sorts of terms, that becomes a digestible sort of thing. Is like, yeah, I can do 10 cents or 20 cents out of every dollar. That seems reasonable. And at the end of the day, if you do that when you start out, you allow the power of compounding interest to really benefit you over time. Yeah,
the unfortunate part about compounding interest is no longer in the real world. It's when I first came into this business back in 1982, you could get 82. I came into the business in 86. In 82, you could get a 10-year CD for 14%. That was the going rate in 1982. 14% for a 10-year CD. Right now, you'd probably get a 10-year CD for 1.5% at best, if you could find one. That's where interest rates have gone. So it's unfortunate that ability to do that has gone, at least in the time frame we're living in right now. So it makes it even more of a challenge for firefighters. I know they have the deferred account, the retirement account. And, if you're going to be long-term, the stock market long-term is a good play, not short-term, long-term. And I think that's all part of it, is the long-term. If you have excess money, if you do that for 25 years in the stock market, short-term, it's a difficult thing just because you can lose, we just saw recently in the spring, you lost 50% in a short period of time, then you gained it back. A lot of volatility. We hope the interest rates will come back at some point in time, but it's going to be a couple of years where we're going to be under this low interest rate environment. It's not going to happen for a fairly long period of time. So, but still, the ability just to be conservative and to push your money away and to, think long term is really the benefit here. And you also want to take advantage of the loan rates right now. I mean, loan rates are just incredibly low too. So, if you need something, it's you're borrowing money at a really, really cheap rate too. So,
and with that in mind, those things are married together, right? You're not going to get a CD that's paying you a huge amount of interest at the same time that interest rates on mortgages are very low, right? I think back in the day when CDs were paying you a significant amount, interest rates on mortgages were very high as well. Do I have that right? Are those two things connected?
Back in the day, I've been around a long time. My older sister's first mortgage back in 1982 was 12.5%. So yeah, she was 12.5, but the CD for 14. Right. And that's when there was 1 year back, I think it was 81 or 82, where the Federal Reserve raised interest rates 1,000% in 1 year. So right now the Fed funds rate is 0. The Fed in 1981 or 82 raised rates to 10% in 1 year. And they did that in order to choke off inflation, kill the economy and choke off inflation. So the Fed purposely destroyed the economy in order to choke inflation out of the economy. And so, yeah, interest rates were sky high, but interest rates, they typically tend to move somewhat in unison. Long-term rates and short-term rates don't 100% move in unison, but they can sometimes move in unison. Typically, long-term rates are defined by inflation expectations. Short-term rates are controlled by the Federal Reserve. So that's how those two things are matched up. Right now, inflation is low, so long-term interest rates are low. The Fed controls short-term interest rates. But if the markets felt that inflation was high and going higher, you'd see long-term interest rates higher. The Fed doesn't control long-term interest rates; the market does. So all the Fed can do is kind of hammer the short-term, which is what they did. And so we're sitting at historic rates across the board everywhere, from the short term to the long term. It's just never seen anything like it. And clearly the pandemic has affected that. Before that, rates were low. The pandemic has made it massively low. It's just destroyed the whole interest margin for everybody. So it's a challenge. It's a real challenging environment for everybody. And, you know, I always say it's kind of a transfer of wealth from the borrower from the saver to the borrower. So if you are a senior and you need some money off your investments, you're not getting it interest rates anymore. It's just gone away. You'll get safety. You know, the credit union's going to maintain your principal balance. You're not going to lose your principal balance, but those interest rates have gone and they've been transferred to the borrowers. And that's really what this does. When you lower interest rates, the Fed knows what they're doing. They're lowering interest rates to the disadvantage of savers and seniors, and they're advantaging to these younger generations so they can borrow and kind of get the economy going. You know, I've seen it probably 4 or 5 times in my 30 years of being at the credit union and being in banking. It's how the Fed works. You know, when times are tough, they lower interest rates. This time, interest rates were already low, and now they've gone even lower. So it is a historic time as far as that goes. Never seen this low.
With that in mind, do you see inflation being a significant risk in the future?
You know, it's interesting. My take on inflation has always been the same, that inflation it depends on your point of view. Years ago, I was at a conference with a Federal Reserve speaker, and he was a former Federal Reserve Board governor. And he was talking about no inflation in the environment. And I raised my hand and I said, where do you live? Because where I live, I see massive inflation. I'm not sure where you live, but where I live, inflation is skyrocketing. And he said, yeah. I said, you know, a lot of it's regional stuff. He said, you know, in Iowa, there may not be inflation. In California, there may be massive inflation. Okay. So, but when you talk no inflation, I guess you're generalizing, but, you know, so it all depends on where you live. I live up in Encinitas, and it's a tract housing development about 3 miles from the ocean. They just had a property go up for sale about 2 months ago on my street, 1,700 square foot property. The highest price I've ever seen. Within 2 days, they had 7 offers, and the offer was $76,000 over market. And that was accepted. And I say, how can there be no inflation? And that it makes no sense to me. You know, my kid is in a house in UTC for college. The rent is astounding, absolutely astounding how high it is. Crazy. How can there be no inflation? So I would say, I'm not sure where you guys live, what you guys are looking at. I guess I can buy a computer cheaper is what their response tends to be. I'm not buying it. You know, housing and food are the 2 biggest expenses. And sometimes that inflation calculation, well, without housing and food, well, you have to live somewhere and you have to eat. So I don't know. I see inflation everywhere. I'm not sure how the Fed I know how the Fed calculates. I was an econ major. I just don't feel that they get it right all the time. But it just doesn't make any sense to me. So I see inflation. The Fed sees no inflation. It doesn't make any sense. Because you can't live in Encinitas anymore. Normal people can't live here. It's way too expensive. Yeah. Most of the people who live in my neighborhood couldn't afford to buy their house anymore. So neither could firefighters or teachers or police officers, or you can't afford to buy a house in this neighborhood. And it's just a regular neighborhood. This isn't anything special. This is just a tract housing neighborhood, 3 miles from the ocean, 1,700 square feet, 40-year-old homes, small lots, nothing special. These aren't mansions. Just something doesn't make any sense to me. But so that's my take on inflation. I think there's massive inflation, but yeah, that's just my personal opinion.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly. Where we see it specifically is in the real estate market, and how prices around here have gone completely haywire. I've had conversations with lots of realtor friends, and nobody can really pinpoint exactly what's going on or where it ends. But what I want to signal something to firefighters listening to this, wherever they are, whether they're here in San Diego or out on the East Coast or whatever. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see people in our line of work making? And it doesn't necessarily have to relate to inflation or the current state of events, but just in general, what are some things that you see us doing that you shake your head or it's frustrating for you in your position? What are some things that we need to stop doing?
The biggest mistake I've seen firefighters make over the past 26 years I've seen the penny stock boom and then bust. I've seen the Arizona, Nevada real estate boom and bust. I've seen what I call the liar loans and the negative amortization boom and bust, cryptocurrency boom and bust. I think what tends to happen is firefighters tend to rely upon other firefighters sometimes for their financial decisions, financial information. Back in the day when there were penny stocks, someone made a boatload of money in penny stocks. So we had a number of firefighters who were taking out home equity loans to buy penny stocks. And that didn't work out all that well. We had someone made money in buying a property in Arizona and Nevada. So we had a number of firefighters taking out home equity loans to buy properties in Nevada and Las Vegas because their buddy made all this money. And, it tends to, I've seen those things go boom and bust pretty quickly. So I think sometimes the biggest thing is maybe following the crowd, and maybe not relying on the financial expertise, but maybe someone who says, hey, I made all this money on this penny stock at 9 cents a share. You should buy, 1 million shares. Well, okay, that's probably not a good choice. So, I always recommend, you go talk to somebody, go to the experts. If you have any questions, call somebody. If you have any concerns, call us, call me, call your broker, use a financial expert to kind of run things by. I mean, I do the same thing myself. I mean, there are things that, even though I've been in this business for a long time, if I have an investment that I'm looking to get into, I use a third party. I mean, I don't rely upon another credit union person telling me, this is a great deal. I use a third party who's an expert in that field to say, what do you think? Let me run this by you. So I think the biggest mistake sometimes is maybe relying upon someone who they know and trust. And I get that. Firefighters live together. They put your life on the line. That that's not the best financial advice always. That you might want to verify that and use a third party, an independent third party, in order to make sure you're doing the right thing before you get yourself in trouble. And like I say, I've been here long enough. I've seen it go up and down, and I've seen the boom and the bust. I tend to be a pretty conservative financial guy, which I always tell people my job as a CEO is not to screw up, not to do something stupid. And so I tend to be conservative in that respect, because unlike banks where you can go get additional capital if you screw up, credit unions, we don't have that ability. So my job is to make good decisions, do the right thing, and not screw it up. So I tend to give that advice to firefighters too, that if you have some questions, concerns, run it by a third party. Call us, call me. I'm more than willing to listen to you and talk to you. If I can't help you, I can refer you to someone who can help you, and we'll give you an impartial third party. I mean, I'm in the middle of looking at some investments myself, and I've farmed it off to someone at Raymond James, so I can have someone at Raymond James take a look at it for me, just to make sure that I have an independent third party look at it and say to me, it's good, it's not good. Here's your questions, here's your concerns. And I think that's the one mistake I think they sometimes make. They follow sometimes what someone told them is a great deal. So my recommendation is always double check, verify. My piece of advice, I guess, to firefighters out there.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Even pro athletes at the top of their game, your wife, for example, they use coaches, right? They use other professionals in that industry to help guide them. So when you're talking about this, that's exactly what I'm thinking about. Is LeBron James has a coach. He has a head basketball coach, but he also has a strength coach and an eating, a dietitian. I'm sure all part of his team. So we would never ask LeBron James to come fight a fire over here in San Diego. We would just never do that. We would talk to, and the same thing applies. Like, why are we trying to make all these investment decisions on our own when the experts are out there, they're available, and they want to help? It just doesn't make any sense. But I do think that we tend to, like you were saying, we have a herd mentality sometimes where somebody comes up with this great plan and you think, well, I know this person, I like this person, and I trust them. It probably makes sense to go into this investment endeavor with him, but it's the wrong approach. And we do get ourselves into trouble like that. Looking back and kind of along those same lines, is there a favorite mistake that you made, something that some decision that you made related to your finances that you're willing to share, number one, but then also something that you learned from that we can sort of glean some information from you?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. The biggest mistake I think I made is 20 years ago when I bought this house. I had a condo about a mile and a half away, and I probably could have kept it. Would have been a little bit of a struggle. I probably could have kept that property. I mean, at the time, my wife was just about to give birth, leave her job, take 50 grand a year out of our income. We're going to double 2.5 times up our mortgage. So there were some reasons for making the decision to let it go. I still probably could have carried it. And Kathleen, who was at the credit union, at my lending VP, who'd been there forever, she even said, "You sure you don't want to keep this?" Yeah. So I let it go. In hindsight, I wish I had kept it. Real estate over the long term does work, right? I mean, that to me is, I think the guys who have become the wealthy people, and firefighters too. I mean, I've known a number of firefighters who've become very wealthy. Real estate, over the long term, real estate works well, but you got to have a long term perspective. And at that point in time, I made the decision to let it go. And in hindsight, if I had kept it, it would have been a really nice thing to have kept. But then again, I'm not a handy guy. I'm not one of those fix-it guys. So that's a struggle too. Is I'm not someone, if something goes wrong, I'm not the guy. I'm a numbers guy. Don't have any skills. Funny thing is, I use firefighters for everything. My plumbing was done by a firefighter. My electrical done by a firefighter. I had some just repair recently down in the stucco done by a firefighter's grandson. We use firefighters. I mean, so I use the firefighter group to do that. So, but in hindsight, I think if I kept that, it would have been a smart move. Just not sure it wasn't the wrong. It was probably a good decision at the time, just based on where we were. But in hindsight, if I kept it, it would have been a better decision. So, I guess the recommendation I make to firefighters, if you do have a property and you can do it, but it builds on itself. Keep that, buy a second one, keep that one, buy a third one. Because to me, it seems like the guys who have made the most money that I know in the fire services, they've done it through real estate, and they've done it by having a long-term perspective, making that decision and not panicking and moving forward and keeping all those properties together. And those are the wealthy guys. So if you see the firefighters around you, those are the guys that have the money, all those real estate guys. So, and the funny thing is, I knew some of them when I was younger. Some of the real old boys that had like hotels downtown and apartment buildings downtown, because they would get together as firefighters and they'd buy these things. And so they had it down, and they knew. They early on, those guys, and firefighters back then didn't make much money, but they were resourceful and they were diligent and they worked hard. They were also, in addition to being firefighters, they were also, construction guys and electrical guys. And so they did a lot of their own stuff. And so they ended up doing really well. But for me, I said, I think the one regret, I wish I had kept that. So that's about it.
Oh, that's a cool story. I guess I'm thinking about, while we can't change the past, we can learn from it and move forward. And I guess you have to strike that balance between getting uncomfortable and risking a little bit, but also seeing the long-term picture like you're seeing, and then letting the sort of inflation help, grow your portfolio a little bit that way. And one nice thing about real estate, and you did touch on it, Ed, was the fact that we are hard workers, we are diligent. A lot of us do come from the trades, so that, real estate is an asset that you can improve yourself. Whereas in the stock market, you're in the stock market and you have no ability to control whether the thing goes up or down. But in real estate, if you can sort of leverage your own skill set, if you had some background in construction, you can improve the quality of that asset. And then over time, the thing you can improve the way it performs. So I love real estate. I think it's a great way of building wealth. But you do have to kind of get yourself in uncomfortable situations without being crazy and risking everything and following the herd out to Las Vegas or Phoenix back in 2008, 2009, where those markets saw a cratering of their prices. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, it's that whole thing. Location, right? I mean, that's really the bottom line with real estate. I mean, the better your location, the better the long-term prospects are for the profitability of that loans, that real estate project. So, but no, we've seen the same thing too. I mean, if you can get it, but right now things are crazy prices right now. So I mean, it's a difficult time to buy. And so, but in the long run, say, things do go up, and that's really the bottom line. So yeah, 20 years ago, if we kept it, would have been a good choice. So, but that's hindsight.
Yeah, exactly. Hindsight being what it is. Well, no, that's great. And I think with that, you got knocked down in your first alarm.
Sounds good.
So if people are wanting to learn more about you, Ed, where can they find out some more information?
The credit union's website, we have the website, sdffcu.org. So they can always go to the website. And, we're back in the office now. At least I'm back in the office pretty much full time now. So, if you want to come by, you can always come by the credit union. Just got to wear a mask. We're in that. Everyone wears masks nowadays, and that's kind of the where the credit union's at too. So they can always call the credit union too. Anyone has any questions or concerns, anything they want to talk about. Like I say, we do everything. We do all the different loans for everything you need. We can do at the credit union. We're a full service loan shop. So whatever you need, we can do. So you can always call me, and I can direct you to where you need to go. If you have any questions, always feel free to call me at the credit union. I'm there, and I'll be more than happy to talk to you and answer all your questions.
Oh, that's perfect. I'll link to all that stuff in the show notes. And I really do want to say thank you on behalf of all San Diego firefighters for the service that you provided us over the last 26 years, the guidance that you provided, and for your time today. And anybody that's listening here, you heard him say it. He's got a complaint box outside of his office. He's got thick skin. If you have a complaint for him, he'd be happy to hear it. So, Ed, thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Kyle.
All right, thanks again to Ed for meeting me here in the bullpen. His advice about not following the herd down the wrong path and hiring a pro to help you make your financial decisions makes a lot of sense. If you'd like to learn more about Ed or the San Diego Firefighters Credit Union, you can find them both at sdffcu.org. If you'd like to learn more about us, we're on Facebook at the FIREhouse. That's f.i.r.e.house. On Instagram, the _fire_house. On LinkedIn, the Firehouse Investors, or any place you listen to podcasts. If you learned something today and you'd like to hear more, please like, share, and subscribe. But no matter what you do, take this information, go out there, and get some. Station F.